Rick, can we do a quick sound check? If you don't mind unmuting your mic. Or where did he go?
Can you hear me?
Is that Dave?
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, you're coming in clearly. Tamara, do you want to do a quick sound check?
Chairman Teskey, good evening.
Good evening, Director Allen. How are you?
Doing very well. Commissioner Sessuris, hello, good evening.
Oh.
Hi. It's Jenny with North Star.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you for that sound check. Yeah, so we'll just ask that you go ahead and leave your mic muted and your camera off until Chair Teskey prompts you to speak. But thanks for that quick sound
And I'm
check.
on my telephone, so I don't have a camera on there.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for letting us know.
Sure.
Bella, can you hear me? This is Rick.
Yes, you're coming in clearly.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
Great, thanks.
Director
Tamara,
Allen,
you're
moving, but I can't hear you.
Once a day, every day. I just wanted to make sure, Chairman Teskey, that you had an understanding of the systems in place for how Bella and I would be managing intake on public comments.
Okay.
So if you haven't already talked with Bella, she will be asking and letting people know when they're up next, if there are comments to be made from the public, and she'll also be doing the 3-minute timing. So we do expect, and it looks like we have a number of people logged in with us already, so are expecting some number of comments this evening.
Fantastic.
Hi, everybody.
Commissioner Gotchis, how are you this evening?
Good. Where'd the time go today?
Bella, where's our PowerPoint?
so you will need
Never
to
mind.
share.
Never mind. I'm having a blonde moment.
Okay, are you comfortable sharing screen when the time
Yeah, I
comes?
should be good. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Jamie.
I can just give you a heads up and
Sorry, I think Santa might be talking to someone else. Jamie, yes, I can hear you, but I can't see you. I don't know if you plan to turn your camera
comments are
on.
due first round Thursday. He now wants to put
Perfect.
shipping containers to store stuff in.
Hey, Santa, can you go ahead and mute your camera, your microphone?
I'm trying to figure out the best way to get those into the system. Obviously, we can have them put them on the plans as part of the response to comments.
I'll just go ahead and mute her. Scott, would you mind doing a quick sound check before we start? Just going up the list here.
Yeah, this is Scott Peterson.
Okay, coming in clearly. I think that's everybody. Commissioner Scissors, are you able to unmute and do a quick sound check?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Commissioner Scissors, yeah, Scissors. Sam, I can. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Great, coming in clearly.
Are you seeing my video feed?
I am not. I'll go ahead and send you a request. Oh, yep, we can see you.
Right.
Commissioner Ellers, would you mind doing a quick sound check? Keith, would you mind doing a quick sound check and unmuting your mic before we begin?
Yeah, I'm using my phone this time. Is it sounding okay?
Yeah, you're coming through clearly. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so 5:31. There's looks like an audience of about 10 attendees. Just let me know before we start, and I will start the broadcast.
How many of our commissioners do we have, Bella?
It looks like there's 5 currently. I believe we are waiting on Andrea and Tamara. Do you know anyone else that may or may not be attending?
Chairman Teskey, I am unclear on whether Christian will be joining or Commissioner Reese will be joining this evening. I know she had a last minute conflict that came up. And I do believe Andrea was planning on joining as well. In fact, as I'm saying that, I see an email just came in from her. So she's having an issue finding the link.
I will send it to her.
Perfect.
Hey, Bella, Trent's trying to get in. Does he have a panelist login?
He will have a unique link. I will resend that to him as well.
She'll resend it to you. Bella's going to resend the link to you. Is Michelle Hansen on yet, Bella?
Yes, she is. And we did a sound check already.
Perfect, thanks.
Is it just us on right now, or can people viewing hear what we're talking about right now?
No, we are in what's called the pre-meeting, so we have not started broadcasting yet.
All right. Can I ask you guys, on my whiteboard, I just have some stuff back here, work-related. Can you read it or clearly see it at all? Or I'm just trying to figure out if I need to wipe that clear or not. Good. Thanks.
Chairman Teskey, I see Andrea has been able to join us. Thank you, Andrea. At this point in time, considering we're 4 minutes past our 5:30 start, Chairman Teskey, I'll look to you on whether you start the meeting. I have not received any additional correspondence from Commissioner Reese on whether she will be able to attend this evening or not.
All right, well, I think with 6 out of 7, we better just roll.
I'll start the broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 23rd, 2021 City of Grand Junction Planning Commission meeting. A couple of housekeeping items. First, agendas are available at the back of the auditorium. They're also available online. Please turn off your cell phones. In order to promote civil discussion and honor the right to differing opinions, members of the audience are asked to refrain from exhibiting expressions of support or opposition, such as cheering, booing, yelling out, etc., at any point during our meeting. Please note that members of the public, as well as applicants, may be joining us via the web this evening. We ask for your patience as we utilize this hybrid system that helps ensure all who want to participate in this hearing are able. In addition, for all items scheduled for public hearing this evening, a public hearing has also been conducted online at gjspeaks.org, where information pertaining to the applicant's request, as well as the presentations, were available. The comments received via GJ Speaks are reviewed in advance by the planning commissioners and are included as part of the public testimony for each corresponding item this evening. Items on the consent agenda are items perceived to be non-controversial in nature and that meet all requirements of the codes and regulations, and or the applicant has acknowledged agreement with recommended conditions. The consent agenda will be acted upon in one motion unless the applicant, a member of the public, a planning commissioner, or staff requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be reviewed as a part of the regular agenda. Consent agenda items must be removed from the consent agenda for full hearing to be eligible for appeal or rehearing. Is there a request from the commission to remove any item from our consent agenda this evening? I believe there are 3. I see no one indicating that they want to remove anything from our consent agenda this evening. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask the commission remove an item from the consent agenda? Bella, I may look to you to tell me whether there is any such person.
Let me review the attendees list here. It does not look like there are any hands raised to suggest that.
Fantastic. I actually have this a little later on in our meeting instructions here as well, but for those of you who are participating through the GoToMeeting webinar this evening, if you wish to provide public comment, you can use the chat function to let us know you have a comment, or you can use your raise hand function as well. If you'd like more information about how to provide public comment through GoToMeeting, there's a handout available in the webinar control panel in the handout section that provides additional details and instruction. Turning back to our consent agenda then, I have one comment, which is that my law firm has an existing client relationship with the Frog Pond LLC, which is the second item on our consent agenda this evening. And so I will probably just be recusing myself from the vote on the consent agenda this evening. But with that understanding, is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Gauchis. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Scissors. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, that matter would pass 5-0. Moving on then. Public hearings are conducted pursuant to the laws of the state of Colorado, the city of Grand Junction, and the regulations duly adopted by the Planning Commission of the city. The purpose of this hearing is to receive information and testimony by all interested parties to enable the Planning Commission to make appropriate findings and reach the conclusions required to be made by law. Both a written and video recording are made of these proceedings. Those who desire to be heard must identify themselves with their full names. The order of the hearing will be as follows: examination of the application and a determination concerning the adequacy of notification, a presentation, description, and analysis of the application by staff, an opportunity for the applicant to present evidence and argument concerning the applicant's position. All other interested parties may then address the commission. A public comment will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker, and please do be aware that's relatively short. The Planning Commission may ask questions of staff, the applicant, or members of the public after each presentation. Public comment section of the hearing may be closed after all public comment has been received. The applicant will be given an opportunity to respond or provide rebuttal if necessary. Staff may respond to any statement made by the applicant, the public, or the commission. And the chair will close the public hearing with no further evidence to be accepted. The evidentiary portion may be reopened only by a majority vote of the commission. After the closure of the public hearing, the Planning Commission will begin its deliberation, which will end in the passage of a motion. The first item on our public hearing agenda this evening is to consider a request by North Star Towing to operate an impound yard on 1.66 acres located at 640 West Gunnison Avenue. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, I'm here. I am.
Thank you. Glad to hear. Staff, are you ready to proceed? Sounds like we might be having some trouble. Oh, there's Ms. Costello. Are you ready to proceed this evening?
Or Santa, you should be able to unmute now.
Yep, it cleared me. Yes, I am ready to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fantastic. Before we begin presentation, was the required public notice given, Ms. Costello?
Yes, it was.
And has the requisite notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements?
Yes, it was.
With that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce your exhibits for the record?
The exhibits include the application that was submitted by the applicant, as well as follow-up material. The second exhibit is maps and some exhibits showing where the proposed screening will be located and what type of screening. And then the third item is an email that we received from a neighboring business owner who had some questions regarding the application.
Thank you. Are there additional exhibits to be added to the record that were not included with the staff report?
No, there are not.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. Please proceed with your presentation.
Bella, could you give me control? Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Santa Costello, Associate Planner of the City of Grand Junction Community Development Department. This is a request for a conditional use permit, also known as a CUP, for property located at 640 West Gunnison Avenue, situated in a C2 or a general commercial zone district. The proposed CUP is to allow for the operation of an impound yard on the property. The applicant for this request is Jenny Henson. This is a site vicinity map showing the property located at 640 West Gunnison, outlined in yellow in the middle of the screen. The lot is approximately 1.66 acres in size The building on the property is used for office space on the ground level and a business residence leased by another tenant on the second floor. As shown on the map, there are a variety of uses in the general area of the site. They include auto repair shops, cabinet manufacturer, contractor shops, mini warehouse units, restaurants, general shopping, a gym, and a residential neighborhood further to the south. This slide shows a comprehensive plan future land use map, which identifies this area as commercial. Anticipated land uses include both commercial and light industrial businesses and should be generally located near major transportation corridors. And this proposal is supported by the comprehensive plan as the site sits near Highway 6 and 50, as well as access over to First Street and out towards the Rimrock Shopping Center. This slide shows the current zoning in the area. As you can see, the site is situated in a C2 or general commercial zone district, as are the properties on either side to the east and west. Properties to the north and south are zone C1, which is a light commercial zone. An impound yard is an allowed use in the C2 zone district as long as a conditional use permit is approved. This slide shows an angled aerial view on the top looking north into the site and a street view looking from the driveway at West Denison into the property. This slide shows the proposed site layout, screening type, and the location of the screening. The site plan is marked with X's showing where the screening will be located, and the site plan designates the area where vehicles will be stored, leaving an open area in the middle. And the upper right is a screenshot, basically, of the type of screening that is proposed to be put on the fence. An email was received, and it's included in the attachments from a neighboring business owner. The applicant has provided additional information to that email in an updated general project report, which is the last document in Exhibit 1. The question, one of the questions that was raised in the email was that there were people being allowed to live in RVs on the property. The actual property owner responded back to that there had been an allowance of or agreement between another property manager on the property and granted permission for that to happen, but that has been stopped and several weeks ago, and it's no longer going to be continuing. The review of a conditional use permit is subject to, should not be. In addition to the zoning and development, the review of a conditional use permit is subject to both the general approval criteria for all permits requiring a public hearing, as well as the specific review criteria for conditional use permits. Criteria on this slide refer to the general approval criteria, which we have reviewed the request against and found that all 5 have been met. They also are required to meet specific CUP criteria, which include meeting zone district standards, specific use standards, having availability of complementary uses, and be compatible with adjoining properties. And we have also reviewed the request against those criteria and found that they are all met as well. After reviewing the CUP 2020-754 for the property located at 640 West Denison Avenue, the following findings of fact have been made. The request conforms with sections 21.02.080D and 21.02.110C of the Zoning and Development Code. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the request with the findings of fact as provided in the staff report. And that does conclude my presentation. The applicant is on the presentation as well and is available for questions, but does not need the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. Do we have any questions for staff at this time? I see some shaking heads. No questions for staff. I understand from Ms. Costello's comments here that the applicant may not have an independent presentation, but we certainly want to give you an opportunity if you'd like to give us an additional presentation.
No, I don't. I don't have really anything to add. I think she said it all.
Well, thank you very much. In that case, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Quick scan doesn't look like it. In that case, at this point, I will open the public hearing for public comment. Please direct questions to the commission, not to the applicant or to staff. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of what has been presented, please note that in your comments. You have agreement or disagreement with preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person, which does go by quickly. Please note the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions that you may pose, but we have heard your questions and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address specific questions. At this point, we'll be taking public comment through our GoToMeeting functionality. There was some comment about that earlier, but if you'd like to take advantage of public comment through the GoToMeeting functionality, please use the chat function to let us know, or raise your hand so that staff can identify you. If you'd like more information, as I mentioned earlier, about how to provide public comment through the GoToMeeting platform, please refer to the handout available in the handouts section of the webinar control panel for additional details and instructions. Bella, do you see anyone requesting comment on this item?
Chair Teskey, I do not see anyone raising their hand, but I will note that attendees do not have the chat functionality. So their only option would be to use the raise hand feature. But yeah, as I finish up speaking, I still do not see anyone utilizing that.
Well, my apologies to participants via the GoToMeeting functionality. You can use your raise hand function, and hopefully you can refer to our handout if you wish for some additional information. Well, hearing no one who wants to provide public comment to us this evening, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. The applicant, would you like to provide any response or additional information? There was no comment given, so we would understand if you didn't.
I don't have any comments, no.
Thank you. Well, for our commissioners here, are there any questions for the applicant or for staff at this point that we have thought of? No. All right. Well, seeing none of those, at this time, we'll close the public hearing entirely and turn to the Planning Commission for additional discussion, deliberation, and or a motion. Who would like to start us off this evening? Commissioner Gotches.
Chairman Teskey, in view of the staff presentation, and the plan meets all conditions for conditional use permit. With the added screening proposed on the fencing, the site is compatible as in the staff report. So I'm prepared to make a motion. After reviewing the North Star Towing Conditional Use Permit Request, CUP 2020-754, for the property located at 640 West Gunnison Avenue, the following findings of fact have been made. The request conforms with section 21.02.110 of the Zoning and Development Code. And I'm sorry, my suggested motion would be, Mr. Chairman, on the conditional use permit for the property located at 640 West Gunnison Avenue, city file number CUP-2020-754. I move that the Planning Commission approve the request with the findings of fact as listed on the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Gotches. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ehlers. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. All right, that matter will pass 6-0. The next item on our agenda this evening is to consider a request by ABBA Enterprises LLC to rezone 2.15 acres from I-2 General Industrial to I-1 Light Industrial Zone District located at 711 South 15th Street. Is our applicant ready to proceed? Perhaps we're still switching a little bit here to get some feedback from the applicant.
We are ready to proceed.
Thank you very much. Staff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. Before we begin, was there required public notice on this item?
Yes, there was, Mr. Chairman.
And has that notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements?
Yes, it has.
Well, with that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce your exhibits for the record?
The initial exhibit is the initial application submitted for review, and the second exhibit is the maps and street views for the property.
Thank you. Are there any additional exhibits that need to be added to the record?
No, there are not.
All right, thank you. You may proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I'm Santa Costello again, Associate Planner with Community Development Department. This is a request to rezone 2.15 acres from an I-2 General Industrial Zone to an I-1 Light Industrial Zone, and the applicant for this request is the property owner, ABBA Enterprises LLC. This is a site location map. The property is located at 711 South 15th Street, just south of D Road. The property is also surrounded by other light and general industrial uses, and the property currently contains an office building and storage yard to the south. The 2020 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map designation for this property is industrial, and is surrounded by other properties also designated industrial. To the south, further along Riverside Parkway, there are some mixed use and commercially designated properties as you get closer to Las Colinas. This slide indicates current zoning in the area. Properties to the east are zoned I-1, which is light industrial. To the north, south, and west are designated as I-2, general industrial. The I-2 zone district is intended to provide areas of heavy and concentrated fabrication, manufacturing, and industrial uses which are compatible with adjacent uses, provide easy semi-tractor trailer access to the state highway system and or railroads, and the availability of public services and facilities. The I-1 zone district is intended to provide areas of light fabrication, manufacturing, and industrial uses which are compatible with existing adjacent land uses, access to transportation, and the availability of public services and facilities. This property meets the purpose of both of those zone districts. This is a street view showing the property in the area, looking into the property from the east, and then again from the south, located in this area. So you're looking north into the building here, and this is the property located on that particular portion of the slide. Pursuant to sections 21.02130C and 21.02140A of the Zoning and Development Code, requests for a rezone shall demonstrate conformance with at least one of the following criteria as identified on the slide. Staff has reviewed the request against each of the criteria as detailed out in the staff report and determined that the request meets criteria 3 and 5 for a rezone. This is the findings of fact. After reviewing the Amberworth rezone request, with the owner being Abbott Enterprises LLC, RZN 2020-568 for the property located at 711 South 15th Street, the following findings of fact have been made. The request has met one or more of the criteria in section 21.02140 of the Zoning and Development Code, and the request is consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the request, and that concludes my presentation. The applicant is available for questions, but does not need to do an additional presentation unless there is need for questions that are come forward through the Planning Commission or the public.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. With that, and I suppose I will give the applicant an opportunity to provide us with any additional information if you'd like.
The applicant has no additional information. We feel the presentation by Ms. Costello to be complete and very well done.
Thank you very much. In that instance, do we have any questions for staff or for the applicant from the commission? I don't see any. All right. At this time then, I will open the public hearing for public comment. Please direct questions to the commission, not to the applicant or staff. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of what has already been presented, please note in your comments agreement or disagreement with preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person, which does go quickly. Please note the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions you pose, but they have heard your questions and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address specific questions. Since we are taking our public comment through the GoToMeeting platform this evening, I understand you may use your raise hand function to alert our staff that you'd like to make comment. If you'd like more information about how to provide comment through the GoToMeeting platform, please check the handout available in the webinar control panel for additional details. Bella, do we have anyone requesting public comment on this item?
Chair Keski, I do not see anyone notifying that us of such.
Thank you very much. Then at this point, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing. Given that no public comment was given on this item, I doubt whether the applicant would like to provide any response or rebuttal, but you're welcome to at this time if you'd like.
You are correct in assuming we have no additional comment.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff at this time that we have thought of in the last couple minutes? I see a bunch of shaking heads, so sounds like we don't. At this time, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the Planning Commission then for additional discussion, deliberation, and or a motion. Who wants to kick us off? Commissioner Cesaris. Commissioner, I believe your mic's muted. We can't hear you.
My speaker is on.
Oh, there you go.
Mr. Chairman, on the rezone for the property located at 711 South 15th Street, City File Number RZN 2020-568, I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of fact as listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Cesaris. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Scissors, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that motion will pass 6-0. Moving right along, the next item on our agenda this evening is to consider a request by the City of Grand Junction to adopt the Patterson Road Access Control Plan, ACP, as Volume 3, Title 38 of the Municipal Code. The applicant, of course, is the city. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Before we begin, was there required public notice on this item?
Yes, there was, Mr. Chairman.
And has the required notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements?
Yes, it has.
Well, with that, then we can proceed. Would you please introduce the exhibits for the record?
Yes, Chairman Teskey, members of Planning Commission, Dave Thornton, Principal Planner with the City of Grand Junction. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight to help present this document, this plan. As far as the exhibit list, the first exhibit number 1 is the staff report dated February 23rd, 2021. Exhibit number 2 is the Patterson Road Access Study itself. Exhibit 3 is the Patterson Road Access Study appendices. Exhibit 4 is Grand Junction Speaks comments and city responses as of February 17th, 2021. Exhibit 5 is the proposed ordinance. Exhibit 6 will be the presentation that you'll have tonight, dated today. Exhibit 7 is additional emails and comments received between February 18th and February 23rd. Exhibit 8 is additional emails and social media comments statistics, also dated the 23rd of February 2021, which is today. And both Exhibit 7 and 8 were sent out to commissioners today, this afternoon, so hopefully you've had a chance to see those. They were sent to your emails that you've registered with us, as well as the city emails that you've been assigned. And that completes the exhibit list.
Fantastic. Have the commissioners all had an opportunity to review those additional comment documents?
Yes.
Looks like we've all got them, Mr. Thornton. Thank you for sending those out. Is there any additional information to be added to our record that was not included in the staff report or in the additions you just mentioned?
There are not.
All right. With that, please proceed with your presentation.
Perfect. We appreciate being here. We're going to have a team of us. I'd like to kind of introduce them real quick. We have Trent Prawl, our Public Works Director of Public Works for the city. Rick Doris, our Development Engineer. We have Michelle Hansen from Stolfus and Associates, our consultant on this project, and then myself. And I'm going to turn it over to Trent and Michelle, and they'll take it from here at this point, and I'll kind of wrap up at the end.
Good evening, Commissioner Teskey and members of the commission. Patterson Road has been one of the backbones of the Grand Valley since it was constructed in the the mid 1980s. It currently serves about 25 to 30,000 cars per day, depending on which section you're in, and is projected to grow to over 40,000 by 2045. For reference, a 4-lane road is approximately, or the capacity of a 4-lane road is approximately 38,000 cars per day, with a level of service PE, with level F being failing, level A being no restrictions whatsoever. As our community continues to grow, we need to look at methods to preserve traffic flow as well as maintain safety of the corridor. For comprehensive plan that was recently adopted, principle number 6 discusses efficient and connected transportation. The second goal is about actively managing transportation systems and infrastructure to improve reliability, efficiency, and safety. Under this goal, there's a discussion about access management. One of those keys to increasing safety and maximizing the life of the 4-lane arterial is through access management. And it's something actually our development engineers do actually apply those access management principles to development applications every day and have for many, many years. But this access control plan will serve as a planning tool for the entire corridor of Patterson Road to study and identify where those access points should be located, as well as what type of access, whether it's right in, right out, 3/4 or full motion. And Michelle will have more detail on that in a minute. But it provides a game plan or a playbook that ties transportation and land use together. Also existing and future land uses. It differentiates with that. This plan is what the corridor will evolve to over the next 20 years. There are no funds identified yet for implementation, although transportation impact fees are anticipated to fund a share of the improvements. The city is not proposing to construct medians down 7 miles of Patterson in the next few years, but rather as redevelopment occurs, safety issues arise, or say an intersection is reconstructed, the city will have a plan for access already developed. This plan helps us provide predictability and increases transparency with various user groups, whether they are existing property owners, someone looking to develop, or users of the corridor. This is actually the second, I know I've represented this differently in workshop as being our first access control plan, but really our Pear Park plan was the first time we took a shot at access management and defining that in a specific plan for the entire area. There, but others here in the region have been completed by CDOT for Highway 50, as well as on I-70B from 24 Road back to 15th Street. It is a plan for not only existing uses, like I said, but for also future uses, and encourages consolidation of access points where possible to ensure a safer corridor and maintain the traffic flow. About a year ago, the city hired Stolfus and Associates to look at access management for the 7-mile stretch from the city limits, from I-70B on the west to Lodgepole Lane on the east, approximately about 30 3/4 road. I know that one of the concerns heard was a lack of outreach, and that'll be addressed in our presentation that Michelle will share in a minute. But yeah, with me today, as Dave mentioned, is Michelle Hansen with Stolfus and Associates, and she'll be presenting a brief summary of the project as well as share the entire plan if requested, as well as where all the outreach occurred and helped shape the access control plan. So with that as kind of an intro, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Great, thanks, Trent. Good evening, commissioners. I'm hoping you can see my screen. Wonderful. Then let's go ahead and get started. As Trent said, we've been looking at Patterson Road for about the last year with staff and members of the public to develop this access control plan. It is for about 7 miles of Patterson Road. Through that corridor, we've found there's 283 existing access points, which brings you to about 40 access points per mile. Just to give you a sense, if we were constructing Patterson as a new road today and using the TEDS manual to develop where access points would be located and based on the spacing there, we'd really be looking more at about 16 access points per mile. So you can see there's kind of a significant difference there. And this plan will help us try to manage that a little bit better, and has also looked at this 20-year planning period where we have taken into consideration other plans in the area, including the extension of F.5 Road and other various improvements the city is contemplating. So as we're looking at access management, it really is a tool to connect the land use and the transportation together. Back in 1984, Patterson Road was constructed. That's these arterial improvements you see kind of at the top of the circle. Once that occurred, you saw increased accessibility and a kind of an economic development that occurred throughout the corridor. Land uses changed. We saw a lot more commercial as well as residential that were feeding to Patterson Road, which in turn creates an increase in traffic through the corridor. That increase in traffic also results in an increase in conflict between vehicles. and ultimately results in congestion and deterioration of how traffic is flowing along Patterson Road. That just starts to get us back to the need to do more arterial improvements. So what access management does is it comes in at this increased traffic conflict point, starts to reduce the number of conflicts, which in turn makes for smoother traffic along the corridor, less delay, and ultimately extends the life of the corridor that you have. So your 4-lane section that you have today, it extends the life of that, and you don't need to go out and build additional lanes. And so that really is our purpose here with this access control plan. It's really to tie the growth that we anticipate over the coming years with the transportation and land use in the area so that we can maximize safety and extend the life of the 4-lane section that you have today. So the major benefits, first and foremost, is safety. You know, when we're looking at crashes that occur at intersections and driveways, 74% of those occur related to left turn movements. So by managing where left turn movements will occur throughout the corridor and not allowing them to occur every possible location where you have an access, you start to reduce those conflicts and ultimately reduce the crashes in the corridor. That results in better traffic flow through the corridor, better travel times, reduced delay, and ultimately, again, that gets to that piece of extending the life of the 4-lane section, not needing to go obtain additional right-of-way for additional width of Patterson Road so that our property owners along the corridor can maintain the property that they own, as well as looking at retaining the original market area that those businesses have through the corridor. People are only willing to drive for so long, and that's not a distance thing, it's more about time. And so if we can keep travel times down, then we can keep that market area larger and ultimately extend kind of the life of that market area. So as Trent said, one of the key things to remember when we're looking at this plan is it truly is a long-range planning document. It is not to be implemented all at once. It is meant to be implemented over time. It's really meant to give the city as well as the property owners a roadmap for how should this corridor look as changes occur in the corridor. So if nothing changes, then you don't need to implement the plan. The things that will trigger implementation of the plan are first, property redevelopment. If a property redevelops and increases the amount of traffic to and from their site by 20% or more, we'll look to implement portions of that plan related to that property. It's important to understand that redevelopment in this case does not mean making improvements to your property in any way. So no, if you add a garage or a fence or a dwelling unit, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a full change in use that will increase traffic to and from your site. The other triggers are if the city has a publicly funded project. So if there's an intersection project, as Trent mentioned, or you do identify a section where you'd like to implement some median, those types of projects could implement portions of this plan. And the last one is if any safety or operational issues develop that can be solved using the plan, that is another trigger that will start to see implementation occur throughout the corridor. So it really is something that will be implemented in phases over time and is meant to be a living document. So if something changes over the course of these 20 years that we didn't anticipate, you have the ability to make adjustments that make sense for the corridor. So some of the principles that we're looking at are raised median. That is an element that can limit those left turn movements that we talked about, and really make strategic decisions about where you're making left turn movements. So that means that right in, right outs will occur. One of the elements that we often hear is that people are concerned that this will create the need for U-turns and that U-turns are unsafe movements. And that is a misperception. U-turns are actually something we encourage with this plan to be used at signalized intersections as well as three-quarter movements. And the reason that U-turns are a safer movement than a left turn movement is that you only have to consider one direction of travel when you're making your movement. Where if you're making a left turn movement from a side road, you got to consider both directions of travel before you make that movement. So that is a little bit of a misperception that U-turns are unsafe, and we actually really use that as a tool to reduce the amount of conflict between vehicles. The three-quarter movement is down at the bottom here. I mentioned this allows us to create some additional access, some additional left turn movement between signalized intersections. And we've tried to identify locations throughout the corridor where we can maximize the use of those and really serve, you know, a multitude of properties. So either by placing them at public streets or at commercial businesses where multiple businesses can take advantage of that left turn movement. So we've looked to apply that in several locations along the corridor. When we look at access points and conflict points, you can see on the left that a traditional intersection, four-legged intersection, has 32 potential conflict points. Just by taking that and making it a three-quarter movement, which still provides all of the movements except that left out or through movement, you've already reduced it by to get to 8 total conflict points, which is a pretty significant reduction. And if we go even further to a right in, right out, we're talking about, you know, four total conflict points. So as you're looking at 283 access points through the corridor, you can see how this could provide a huge impact on just reducing the amount of conflict and allowing smoother traffic flow along the corridor. So as we got started, we set out with some project goals with city staff. The first two are really a balancing act between effective and efficient through travel and providing safe and effective access throughout the corridor. We're also looking a lot at circulation and understanding how, if you start to limit movements, how can you use the local street system to circulate and get to your desired destination. Alternative modal choices are important along Patterson, and by reducing conflicts for vehicles, we also reduce conflicts for our pedestrians and bicycles. Again, we want to be able to implement this in phases. It's not a project that we do all 7 miles all in one fell swoop. We have made sure that we can do that, as well as made sure we could be compatible with the city's goals and the previous local planning efforts that have occurred. So when you look at why on earth do you need to adopt this access control plan? As Trent said, city staff is already using access management tools throughout the city, and using this existing process on the left. They really can only look at things at one access point at a time as properties redevelop. They can't connect the dots between multiple access points or have a plan for how this should all work together. what we can do with the plan is we've been able to look at it corridor wide. We've been able to connect how one access point impacts another. We've been able to connect land use and transportation together. And it really provides this predictable, transparent plan that both city staff and property owners can take a look at and really understand what's expected as changes occur throughout the corridor. And just gives that roadmap, right, of what should this look like as things change along Patterson Road. So access, obviously a personal topic for a lot of people, especially the property owners along this corridor, and we recognize that. We've done given numerous opportunities for people to participate with us. You know, some of our events have been affected by COVID, and it's been wonderful to have the city's GJ Speaks website to really be able to reach out farther and capture a broader audience through the website. You can see here we've had some events where we had some one-on-one conversations with folks. 56 different groups we've been able to have really one-on-one conversations at these various events. But when you look at GJ Speaks, you can see there's been 621 unique page views, and that's of the access control plan itself. 155 of those we had video views, which meant people spent probably dug a little deeper into what this access control plan was. In addition to that, we have done some social media outreach and really seen a large number of people that we were able to connect with. On Facebook alone, over 6,600 people viewed the post. 878 of those people engaged in some way. So that means they either made a comment, or they liked it, or they shared it with a friend. So we really are starting to see, I think, that the virtual world can really capture a greater audience and get people involved in this. So you can see we've talked with a few groups more than once, that have a little more complex issues, and also try to engage a lot of the stakeholders like emergency services and the school district and the chamber. Really been able to reach quite a few folks, and especially I would say over the last couple months here. So I have all 16 sheets of our exhibits. I thought I would just maybe give a few examples of some of the locations where we've either had some comments or some outreach that have modified how we looked at the plan. But certainly, if there are certain locations that you'd like more information about, I do have them all available to us. As we look at the plan, the circles are signalized full movement intersections. Those triangles are the 3/4 movements where you can make left turns in, but the left turn out is restricted. The stars are right in, right outs, and the X's are closures of access that we're looking to consolidate access. But I do want to note that we have it ensured that every property along the corridor has access to the street system in some way. So I'd like to start here at Patterson Village Square. At this location, we originally had a 3/4 movement identified at access 30. And we were really, from our point of view, trying to maximize the amount of space between left turn movements to make sure that we could develop the left turn lanes appropriately. With some feedback from some of the property owners in Patterson Village Square, they identified that 29 really serves quite a few more businesses than 30 does, and ultimately the shared access that we would provide there could still provide 30 that 3/4 access as well. And could we consider moving the 3/4 movement access from 30 to 29? Upon further evaluation, we determined that based on TED's manual requirements, that we did have enough space to provide a left turn movement between both 27 on the south side and 29, and ultimately went ahead and made that change so that we could serve a greater number of businesses with the 3/4 movement. Similarly, here on page 4, we were hearing kind of similar comments about the desire to serve more businesses with some 3/4 movement. While there is some circulation that occurs here, when we looked at the requirements from the TEDS manual, again, the 3/4 movements worked out. And so we were able to provide that at 40, 41, and 44, and get left turn movements there for the post office and other businesses in the area. Here on page 5, you can see a large number of consolidations that are occurring. Those consolidations are actually in process now through development. And so those, accesses 51, 52, all the way through 59 that are showing as closed actually are occurring already and are in process through the city's development review process. Here on page 6, I'm going to direct your attention to the accesses 72 through 78. This is a section where we have some residential access. And initially, we were looking to consolidate some access here and only provide one access per property at this location. Due to some coordination we had with the property owners located here, they expressed some concern about how that would work for them over time, given their current condition. With one of them is residential, one of them is a combined residential and business, and really we're concerned about how circulation on their site would occur, and ultimately, what we looked at was that it didn't really make sense to reduce their access unless such time that they were to redevelop into something else. So, if these residential properties over time became commercial, it's at that point that we would reduce their access. These conditional that are marked with the C would be closed, and just a single access for each of those properties would be provided. But given their current condition, those access points would remain. Even if a median project were to come through, those access points would remain so that they can circulate properly on their business or their residents. Here on sheet 8, Patterson Gardens was another group that we met with early on. They came to our open house. We initially had identified access 130 as a closure. They came concerned again, from a circulation point of view and in the number of properties that are served by these access points. And we were able to take a look and provide them a write out only at 130 to allow them to kind of continue the circulation that's occurring today. That was a change that they were happy to see and comfortable with, the understanding that eventually those will go to write in, write out. Here on sheet 9, the Northeast Christian Church was also another group we spent a lot of time with. We initially identified a fourth leg of 27.5 road. that would provide full movement access. And really we're looking at limiting access other than that long term. The church indicated some concern. There are some utilities located right across from 27.5 Road. And so the cost of providing that fourth leg is fairly significant. And they had some concern about, how with their use, left turn movements could be provided. So we worked with them to provide a 3/4 movement there at access 148 that will allow left turns in. We also have provided this connection that you see with the pink dashed line that will ultimately connect them to Wellington Avenue and get them to 15th Street, which is a signal. So between those two items, it kind of helps them to obtain all the movements available. And we still provide this 145A at 27.5 Road for flexibility. So if this redevelops into something completely different and, that developer has the gumption to go ahead and move those utilities, this plan gives that flexibility to provide that fourth leg on 27.5 Road. Here at Matchett Park, this is another section where there's quite a bit of access to the city-owned property. You can see there's 7 or 8 different access points that ultimately will be closed with the development of Matchett Park. And so those are will all kind of be captured in one project, and that elimination doesn't really affect any other businesses or residences along the corridor. And the last section that I had kind of highlighted, certainly if you have questions, let me know, but wanted to talk through this section between 29 and 29.5 Road. We have received a few comments from the subdivision on the north side, concerned about, what the eventual implementation will look like with left turn movements removed. So just wanted to walk you through a little bit some of the topics that we considered in this section when we were looking at where should we provide 3/4 movement in those left turn movements. And as I mentioned, we're looking at places where we're going to be serving the most vehicles. Access 205 on the south side goes to Safeway and really has quite a few vehicles turning left there, that if we push them to 29 Road, we start to impact the operations of that intersection at 29 Road. So keeping 3/4 movement there at the Safeway was important. We also look for places that don't have options of getting left turn movements or circulation options. So you can see Red Wing Lane with the cul-de-sac. They don't have a lot of options to circulate to the local streets. So 3/4 movement was identified there. So then as we looked on the north side, we're really looking to provide 3/4 movement that's going to serve as many of the residences in that area as possible, while trying to balance the spacing with the left turn movements on the opposite side of the road. So, the space between 212 and 229 at 29 3/8 Road provides us the amount of space we need to develop that left turn. Where some folks have asked about Prismar Street, we just really didn't have the space between 205 and 211 to develop those left turn lanes. The good news is that there is a lot of circulation opportunity available here. So everybody can get to 29 3/8 and make those left turns. Bonito Avenue provides an outlet to 29 Road. And future development down the line will eventually also connect this whole section to 29.5 Road. So the circulation on that side really provides a lot of options for folks to get themselves to a signal to make their left turn movements. So I'm going to stop because I know there's lots to get through tonight. And if you have questions about other locations, let me know. Ultimately, with this plan, over time, you'll see a 60% reduction in conflict points. We'll, again, over time, reduce from 283 access points to 160. 71 of those are consolidations that could occur with a public project or with redevelopment. 18 of those are already in process, or they're under city ownership and will be done all in one fell swoop. So any of the other remaining consolidations will only occur with redevelopment and really will depend on what property owners decide to do with their property. So again, remember, it's a long-range plan. It really is the roadmap and provides the tools for your staff and property owners to work together on what access will look like over time in this corridor, and has the ability to be amended if changes pop up throughout the lifetime of the plan. So we're here tonight to ask for your recommendations on this plan with the intent to go to City Council for second reading on March 3rd. I will go ahead and pass it over to Dave to talk a little bit about the code analysis for this access control plan.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Nice job. Appreciate your presentation, and as well as yours, Trent. As we do with any plan that we are seeking as part of our code, or adoption as part of the code, we've taken a look at it and we analyze it based on our zoning development code. The Patterson Road Access Control Plan will become Title 38 in Volume 3 of the Municipal Code and one of many planning documents that support and implement the city's comprehensive plan. Pursuant to Section 2102-130C2 of the Grand Junction Zoning Development Code, the city may adopt plans consistent with the visions, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and the following criteria for plan amendments are met. Under the Zoning Development Code Section 2102-130C criteria, the city may amend the comprehensive plan, neighborhood plans, corridor plans, and area plans if the proposed change is consistent with the vision, intent, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and meet at least one of the additional criteria that are listed there on the slide under the additional criteria, Roman numeral 1 through Roman numeral 5. This ACP that for Patterson Road is the first access control plan for Patterson Road, and its need continues to grow as traffic increases with new development occurring along and in proximity of the corridor. Many Grand Junction residents and visitors use the corridor for their transportation needs. The ACP is supported by the recently adopted 2021 Grand Junction Comprehensive Plan, in particular Strategy F under Goal 2 of the plan, Principle 6, Efficient and Connected Transportation, which strategy states that access management that will plan, implement, and support the development of access control plans. It even has the example in there in the comprehensive plan where it calls out Patterson Road and North Avenue. This Patterson Road Access Control Plan study is ready for adoption as a planning document implementing the city's comprehensive plan adopted December 16, 2020. For the additional criteria, staff finds criterion 1, 2, and 5 have been met as discussed in the staff report. In particular, criterion 5, as noted in the staff report, states access control plans work to coordinate planning, regulation, and design of access to properties along a corridor. The Patterson Road ACP manages the location, spacing, design, and operations of driveways, median openings, and street connections, and manages the road corridor to not only preserve the transportation functions of the corridor, but also to help preserve property values and the economic viability. It optimizes the performance of the roadway to improve the level of safety, reduction of traffic congestion, and is key in minimizing the need to add additional lanes of traffic, expansion from 2 lanes to 3 lanes each way, that would have a much greater impact to the corridor and adjacent properties. So it's staff's recommendation to Planning Commission of approval of this Patterson Road Access Control Plan. And with that, I'll just open it up for, it ends our formal presentation, and we'll open it up for questions or comments from the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Thanks to all our presenters on this matter. Do we have questions regarding this matter this evening from the Commission?
Chairman Teske.
Commissioner Gotches.
This question is for Michelle. On your on the slide that triggers the access plan. Yeah, great. Could you give a couple of examples of the third one, as safety or operational issue develops? What are some examples?
Sure. So, I mean, I think the biggest one is you start to develop a crash pattern. If you start to see a number of crashes occurring at a particular location, that can be solved by implementing access management. So if you were seeing a lot of left turning vehicles getting T-boned at a particular location, for example, that's and the plan suggested that you should do a 3/4 movement or a right in, right out at that location to limit those left turn movements. That's something that both the city and any of the property owners in that area will be very interested in addressing right away. Other elements would be, you know, if you started to see some operational issues, perhaps there's vehicles that are queuing back into the through lanes because people are trying to make left turn movements at places in between the signalized locations. And you're starting to either see crashes because people are starting to rear end people, or you're starting to see backups occur back into your other intersections that are starting to impact how the corridor works or how a particular intersection works. That's another example of an operational issue that could occur where you might want to start implementing some access management to allow the free flow movement of traffic there.
Thank you, Michelle. You've answered my question in detail, and I want to compliment you on a very well prepared report. I have one more question, Chairman Teske, but don't want to take the other commissioners' time. But I do have one other question for Trent Trawl.
Please go ahead.
Trent, thank you. Does the city have any planned publicly funded projects for the Patterson Road corridor at this time?
The publicly funded projects that we have slated for the Patterson Road corridor at this point are those associated with the 2019, fall 2019 ballot initiative 2A for transportation expansion projects. While the majority of that is for like the F&a-half Parkway, the widening of 24 Road, 26.5 Road, and a myriad of other projects, we do have budget in there to improve turn lanes at a few of the intersections, such as like a right turn lane at 28.25 Road, eastbound right turn lane at 28.25 Road. We do have a couple of lanes proposed at turn lanes again at 29 Road and then back at 25 Road as well. Those are the only projects currently identified in the city's capital improvement program for the Patterson Road corridor at this point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Gotches. Do we have other questions for staff?
This is Ken. First of all, I want to just congratulate the staff and Stolfus Consultants for just an outstanding job tackling a really complicated and huge project. and that includes their outreach to the public, which I think was really good. My question has to do with non-motorized transportation, walking and bicycling mainly. I haven't seen, and maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen like a master plan for that would run through this project. My concern is that historically we've relegated that to patchwork improvements at the time of developments that often lead to short segments that don't really connect or lead to anything and don't really end up helping much. So is there a comprehensive non-motorized traffic plan? And also, has the Urban Trails Committee weighed in on this, and has it been coordinated with their master plan?
So Commissioner Scissors, I'll take a shot at that. So as part of our comprehensive plan, we did adopt an active trails or an active, Dave, if you could help me for a second, active transportation corridor, corridors throughout the community. And so Patterson Road is not one of those corridors. We try to cross that and then try to encourage bike use on say Orchard Avenue or other routes further to the north to move throughout the corridor. We do have bike lanes east of about 28.5 Road, but we do not have bike lanes on Patterson Road west of there. Just when it was constructed back in the 80s, the width just wasn't there for it. We do have sidewalk along most of the corridor on both sides. And it definitely gets wider as you progress further east, as there was more space allotted for those movements at that point. But as far as that particularly being a part of this plan, I mean, that was considered. I mean, we were looking at some significant changes at 15th Street that would only allow bikes to move north-south across that corridor, as that's one of the major active transportation routes between Horizon Drive and downtown. And anyway, there was just so much other movement that happened there that we ended up still retaining the full motion intersection for all modes of travel and not just bikes there. So, but other than that, Michelle, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think, as when we were looking at the access control plan, we were really looking at how, if you have parallel travel, what does this plan mean for that? And from a parallel travel standpoint, as you have sidewalks, reducing access reduces the number of conflicts for pedestrians with vehicles, right? Because they're not crossing as many driveways. We also looked at crossing locations. And those really are fairly focused at this point at the signalized intersections. There may be potential in the future for some mid-block crossings, but some additional investigation really would be needed. We did not identify those specifically with this plan, and I think you would want to investigate those specifically as they start to come up, to look at both what's the level of use, as well as consider how the amount of traffic and the speeds on Patterson relate to those, and how you might treat a mid-block type crossing like that to make it safe and I guess advantageous for the pedestrians and bicycle users in the corridor.
Thank you, Michelle. That really helps me understand it, because I was trying to wrap my head around pedestrians and bikes on the more mid and western sections of Patterson. There just simply isn't room. But focusing on safe crossings and then sidewalks where available makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Gotchis.
Chairman Teske, I have one more question. It's this for all the staff. As we've had workshops this month and getting the information. It seems to me that there's been quite a bit of time spent with concerned citizens, business, and residents along the corridor. I'm going to first ask Trent. Trent, how much time have you spent, maybe with even its specific access points, with concerned people? And it looks like you and our consultant have come up with maybe some changes. But could you share with the public the amount of time you spent the past year with different individuals?
Commissioner Gotchis, yeah, so I've spent a fair amount of time out there, but not near to the extent that Michelle and her staff have invested there. Dave Thornton and Rick Doris have invested many more hours than I have there. But I did have the opportunity to reach out to a couple of property owners here earlier last week, and it was great standing out there on the side of Patterson Road and definitely getting a better appreciation for why we made the changes we did there, but that had already been vetted through previous discussions with Michelle and with Rick. But we did come to some other conclusions there that, as far as defining, and we can specifically define what those Cs mean on the access control plan. So the right-in, right-outs, the conditional ones there, under exactly what conditions that would occur at. And so for those particular property owners, we're looking at a condition that would only be upon redevelopment. Even if the city or a private developer was to develop width in the road to create a left turn lane to the north there on those parcels there in between 1st and 7th. Even if that was to happen, we would be, thank you, Michelle, even if that was the left turn proposed for access 74, we can specifically list that those conditionals parameters associated with that C would be only upon redevelopment and that, or a safety improvement, but that just the widening of Patterson Road to incorporate that left turn into 74 would not necessarily take away those conditional accesses at that point. So kind of a middle ground there. But anyway, again, Rick Doris and Michelle and her staff and Dave Thornton were the ones who really met with the majority of the various property owners. Other than at the open houses, I did meet with a lot of folks out there by the Spring Valley and Grandview and Dawn subdivisions at 28 Road. And, we didn't have the slide included here today, but they were very concerned about, the accident history there at 28 Road and how difficult it is to get a left out there at 28 Road, just due to the amount of traffic out there on Patterson Road. And we already have in the budget for this year a connection further to the north here from Hawthorne Drive over to 28 1/4 Road that'll allow all those subdivisions to utilize Hawthorne Drive to get to 28 1/4 Road, which has a signal at it, and that'll allow them a left turn to head east on Patterson Road. At that point, then 28 Road would just become a 3/4 access, since they would then have access over to a signal. And so that's one that's been brewing, if you will, for quite some time. And so we finally were waiting for the development of Matchett Park. And since that was delayed here for at least a few years, we decided to move forward on that as part of being a safety improvement for the corridor.
My only other comment would be, I certainly don't want to leave Rick Doris off, our traffic engineer, but I would say it's been to our advantage, I think, developing this plan that we have Dave and Trent. You guys do have quite a bit of history, and you probably know quite a bit about that corridor. It's not like you're new on the staff, so I appreciate that. Dave, do you have any comments on since since this plan is a working document, it seems to me that people that, because I did read 25 additional comments before the meeting, but some of these people still would have some input on this since it's a working plan. Is that correct?
Commissioner Gatos, Dave Thornton here. Absolutely, we're always looking for input in any planning process, all the way up to the last moment, and so because experience tells us sometimes there may be something that we missed in the sense of having better information in front of us. We think we've been pretty thorough in this PCP. We've spent a lot of time with the consultant team going through the corridor, inch by inch, basically, and talking with the various folks along the way as we've had opportunity to. It's been a great process, and I think it's been a thorough process.
Thank you. Do we have other questions for staff at this time?
I have a few questions, and with that, I may have more after we hear maybe from the public, but I first want to echo my other commissioners here that the effort that's been made here, it's very evident that there is a competent level of subject matter expertise that's generated this data and then been able to interpret this data and provide a range of solutions there. So I want to certainly acknowledge that and thank you for that. And then next, the questions I have, I want to kind of disclose them as with all the progress that's been made in the data and the thoroughness of this report, there's been a few things come up here that I personally need some more comfort that we're there, that we're at the finish line and ready to approve. And that's just based on the absence of having these answers. So one of them, or a couple of them, are pulled from the comments that have been provided here just in recent days that were compelling, and I'm not sure I saw the answers there. So one of them was looking at how we seem to have a lot of the data regarding the potential conflict points at various intersections, and then of those percentages of accidents that happen, the percentages that are allocated to the different turning movements. But the question becomes, what is the real time window when those factors are relevant to this? And if there's a primary concern about the hour in the morning and then the hour in the evening, is that really the bulk of what we're making this whole plan for and eliminating access points for the rest of the time? And even if so, if the answer is yes, is it in fact warranted to prevent those? Another one that came up, and I'll kind of give the shotgun blast because maybe some of your answers will be, maybe one answer will answer several of these questions. The other one was the impact to the intersections that we are trying to direct them to, whether they be the signalized intersections or these three-quarter movement intersections, once we close off all of these things. And I'd like you to maybe speak to what level of true traffic study and counts and traffic impact would have on those intersections, not necessarily just from the volume sort of things, but what we've seen in other heavy corridors throughout the western Colorado, and particularly related to CDOT, of course, they have roads like this all over the place, is that the turn lanes and the queue times at those intersections become so significant when traffic focuses in on them that the lengths of those turn lanes aren't long enough, or to make them long enough, we have to then adjust the signal light for those turn lanes, and the overreaching impacts of that to the corridor can sometimes be detrimental. And if I make a leap of comparison, we've seen at the national level our federal lands and road closures happening for merits that might be sound, and now in recent years we're seeing those roads that are left to be accessed and the campgrounds and campsites or whatever the locations getting completely overrun. And so I saw some of those questions come up in the comments, and I'm hoping you can speak to that a little bit. Next was a question of, are medians really the only answer? I'm not sure that I didn't look in the right places or didn't see what alternatives there are to medians. Medians seem inherently like such a waste of space other than a pretty thing to look at, especially considering all of the infrastructure corridors that we're constantly seeking to place for, the multimodal deals, advanced technologies, things of that nature. So are medians truly the only answer? And then I also want to ask about what other agencies may or may not be tied to the adoption of this plan. For example, we talk about how this is a living document and it can be amended in the future. Most developers and businesses would certainly expressed concern anytime they have to do something that the process is cumbersome. And in other access plan adoptions, now granted they're particularly this way with when roads are with CDOT, if you have multiple agencies approving an access plan, then it takes multiple agencies to get that plan adjusted. And I just wanted to kind of touch base on if there's anything like that prolongs or makes the process of a justified change unnecessarily painful. And then lastly, I wanted to speak to my surprise at the Chamber of Commerce's letter coming in that, they seem to not feel like they either knew about this or had enough time to contribute. And I'm not as concerned about the merits of whether they were contacted, weren't, or if they had enough time or not. They seem to be making comments that reflect their members, the business community's concern about some of the impacts there. And if they haven't had enough time in this case, because this isn't as though it's a private development or something that we're waiting to take action on, and by pushing this down the road a little bit, it's not going to cost somebody a lot of money or economic pain. I wonder if maybe a little bit more time to get some real response on these questions that came up, including the Chamber's comments, would be there. So there's my shotgun blast. Please help me get comfortable that we're at the finish line, and that maybe even with all the progress we've made, there isn't a little bit more to do before we're ready to go.
So if you don't mind, I'll start at the last one and work my way up. The Chamber of Commerce not having enough time. I mean, we did outreach to them probably a little bit later than we preferred, but so I think I got a hold of Diane there about the third week of January, and set up a meeting to meet with her. Then at that point, we did meet with their board last. I believe it was the 18th that I presented to their board. I did provide the entire the 16 sheets that are part of the access control plan, as well as a one-page summary to Diane to share with her board. But keep in mind the outreach that we did have that was summarized in Michelle's presentation here tonight. Really was really extensive. I mean, we sent out twice postcards to all the property owners, all the business owners, and tenants, all along the corridor, the homeowners associations, the business owner associations, and so forth, and for up to 1,000 feet to the north and to the south. That's how we came up with 840 the first time, and then we had about 40 of those returned, or maybe a little more than that, and then that led to the next mailing for the January meeting or virtual meeting that we had. But again, as the post to GJ Speaks and so forth, or at least the visits there, and the views of the videos and so forth. I mean, it's fairly extensive outreach, and that was just recently compiled here by planning staff on exactly how much we did get through social media and through our through our virtual platforms there. So, you know, in regards to, you know, being at the finish line with, you know, the outreach that was completed here, you know, based on that slide that Michelle has there for us to review again. I think it was very thorough as far as those unique page views, 621. The postcard sent, I mean, yeah, we sent 1,581 of them, but 740 of them went to the same folks that got the 841 the first time. So as far as what other agencies are adopting or would adopt this plan, this is us. As far as I know, and maybe Deputy City Attorney Jamie Beard would be able to correct me, but this is us. We don't interact with CDOT anywhere along the corridor except on the very far west end where we tie into I-70B, and the access points that were proposed to be modified there had no impact on CDOT. So, and we stayed within our swim lane, if you will, or within the city limits. We did not extend, you know, on down Patterson Road into the county. The one exception being the Cross Orchards Museum was the only one that was on the south side, and we had extensive discussions with them a couple of different times talking about their access points. Medians, are they the only answer? Yeah, yes, we've tried pork chops in the past. However, those are easy to get around and essentially disobey and get around and potentially make, you know, unsafe maneuvers there. Michelle, I'm not sure if you had anything else to add on that in regards to the medians. We did have a few other slides that we spared you this evening that talk about some of the other principles of access management as far as trying to encourage property or access off of the lower order street. Say, like, instead of accessing Patterson Road, you know, why don't we look at a street to the north, you know, in order to get over to 25 Road, and so forth. So there's other, you know, principles in there. Michelle, anything you wanted to add on that? Yeah,
that was the only thing is that we've talked a lot about medians because we know that is a high concern of the public and high interest of the public. But there's a whole host of techniques that we've used in this plan, from consolidating access so that you only have one access per ownership, sharing access between properties, which you're already doing in a lot of places throughout the corridor, but identifying other places that provide benefit for that, the lower order streets, as Trent said, even things like you know, looking at where you're developing turn lanes, right? Where can we develop these turn lanes, and making sure that the turn lanes are compatible with each other so that you do have that length that you talked about, Commissioner Ellers, to have enough storage there for the queuing that will occur. And so considering how those left turn movements interact with one another is also another piece to that. So there's a whole host of techniques that are incorporated into this plan, and you know, the median is a bit of a backbone in particular, but quite a few things considered.
So working back up Commissioner Eller's list here, and in regards to turn lanes and queue times, you know, getting so significant that we have to adjust, you know, through traffic green times, I guess, and then impacts to intersections that we're trying to direct them to, and so forth. So yeah, as evidence there on Patterson Road, you know, at 29 Road. I mean, 29 Road coming down from Cap Rock Academy is already an extremely busy corridor. Especially when the school is what I call loading or unloading. And a lot of the 29 Road concerns will be alleviated once when the interchange is constructed, the widening of 29 Road, and again, access management principles, being applied to that corridor, but being able to get, the folks of Chrismar subdivision either to the west over to 29 Road or to the east over to 29.5 Road, so that they can make those turns safely at an intersection, those left turns safely at a signalized intersection. And so, yes, those side streets will have to be, looked at and evaluated and improved with additional turn lane stacking and so forth when any of those other access management measures are applied, in that particular section. And then the last one that you had, so I think I covered a couple on that one, but the last one that I had that I wrote down here was potential conflict points, the percent of accidents to turning movements for the rush hours. And I might turn to Michelle for that, as they definitely looked at the accident history and where that was all along the entire corridor.
Yeah. So yes, we've looked at that. I would say, over half of the accidents that are occurring are happening at intersections or driveways through the corridor. So we have that sense of the number of accidents that are happening along here. The majority of them are happening at intersections. Now, some of that is happening at your signalized intersections, right? Just inherently, signalized intersections can cause crashes, your rear ends, and that type of variety. But just across the board, intersections and driveways are kind of driving that. There are certain portions of the corridor that have a higher number, and those sections are, sections that you might look at closer or sooner than later. Towards the east end of the corridor, the crash rates really are not overly high. I expect that you wouldn't be looking at implementing median down there for some time. In that section where, let me see if I can get us there real quick. This section where we have a whole bunch of access, there's, we are seeing higher crash rates, and some of that may also be to the geometry of the road there, where it gets very narrow. And so there's quite a lot of things happening all at once. So crash rates are a little higher there. In terms of, when you're talking about traffic engineering, you are looking a lot at your peak hours. So that morning peak, that evening peak in the afternoon, sometimes you have a little bit of a noon peak. And so, yeah, do you need this access control plan at 10 p.m. at night? No, but the value that it brings you in those peak hour periods, that's where you have your those are the times you're having your congestion. Those are the times you're having your crashes. So the value that it brings you during those periods of time that will continue to grow, by the way, as traffic continues to increase, those that 1 hour moves to 2 hours, starts to move to 3 hours. That's going to continue to, those peak hours are going to continue to get longer and start to run into each other. But the value that it brings you during those peak hours is significant, and I think that's where people are looking for their travel times to be reduced. That's where people are looking for safe way to enter and exit Patterson Road. So from my experience and what I've seen throughout my career, it's worth taking these measures on your arterial roadways to make them work better and to make your system work better.
Okay, thank you. Then the last question I had that I meant to get in there too was, if all of this is determined to be sound and all the engineering is there, and as you're explaining here and answering these questions, then a knee-jerk reaction I have for concern on something like this is who pays for this, right? And I've asked that kind of question before, and you guys have done a very good job of making it clear that that's not what this plan does, is decide who pays for it, and that will be other city policy. Yet I'm wondering if there isn't an opportunity to help facilitate and not back the next policymaker into a corner by providing an alternative that really focuses on the core of this plan, which is to manage the safety and keep speeds up in order to manage the economic development of those areas there and expand their range. So is this plan a good place to have alternatives? One idea, just to kind of get the point across, would be that if a private sector or a business on a corner gets triggered to have to do some sort of access management that would otherwise be these very expensive medians and landscaping and all of this sort of thing, which we as a community want from an aesthetic perspective for this corridor, but may not be directly related to just the safety, could they have an alternative in there to implement automotive dividers and whatnot that we see on busy streets all over the place, recognizing full well that they're not beautiful and they're not pretty, but if it's an economic standpoint, is there an opportunity for our private sector to not be burdened with such a significant cost that this may trigger and have that? And is this the plan to acknowledge that alternatives could be out there, or is that again something that goes to the next page of the policy, which comes to how do we pay for it?
So, Commissioner, I'm sorry, what?
I said that's the last one. I promise.
All right. Commissioner Ehlers, in regards to who pays, we realize that this will be most likely a cooperation in between the city and the and private development, especially on a corner, depending on what's redeveloping there. You're right, that could become fairly extensive as far as a cost to incur. I would offer, as far as a point of reference, the median out in front of Pyramid Printing, which is at 2526 Patterson Road. That's about 250 feet long, and I think we put it in about 2004. If we were to build that today, we'd probably be looking at about a $70,000 improvement with the landscaping and so forth, and a lot of that's due to the traffic control, involved in that. Just trying to give you a reference there. It's not a $500,000 median or $1 million median. I mean, it's in the 100 foot long is going to be about $33,000, whereas that one in particular, yes, it's actually hidden by I think the Patterson Road right here in the middle. There's where that 250 foot long median is, and so that kind of gives you at least an idea of the scale of what they would have been looking at that point. As far as determination of what that cost share may be, we do need to keep in mind that our transportation impact fees were implemented at 75% of the recommended amount there, and so having things shared proportionately there as far as the costs, or anyway, we still need to define that, and as I had stated previously, state that probably in a separate document from here. But as far as other alternative methods for a development, and maybe the city isn't queued up to do a large intersection just yet, say at 25 Road and Patterson, there's new development that's happening, but we really need to implement, a portion of the access control plan for a particular development. At that point in the city's projects, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, maybe there are some alternatives there with like a ribbon median, it's only 2 feet wide, that might provide the same level of access control, that we're trying to accomplish here with the plan, in to get us by in the intermediate step before the larger, city project comes in place. So, did that get to your question there, Commissioner Ehlers?
It did. Thank you. The price reference for scale and whatnot was very helpful too. It's obviously a lot of these questions are a fear-based worst case scenario kind of scenario. But so that's helpful to kind of reel those in.
Okay.
Do we have other questions for staff at this time? I don't see any. So appreciate everyone's feedback. At this time, we will open the public hearing for public comment. Please direct questions to the commission, not to the applicant or staff, who are the same folks in this case. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of what has already been presented, please note that in your comments, that you have a disagreement or agreement with preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. That does go quickly. Please note that the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions that you may pose, but that they have heard your question and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address any specific questions that you may have. I presume that we are going to be having some public comment here through the GoToMeeting platform, and as a reminder to everyone, you can use the raise hand function, and Bella will be keeping track of who is coming up next and providing you some information about that, as well as timing your testimonies to provide you with the 3-minute cutoff. So if you would like to use your raise hand function, please go ahead. If you'd like additional information about how to provide that comment, please refer to the handout available in the handout section of the webinar control panel. Bella, why don't you let me know who's up first and how we want to go from here.
Absolutely, Chair Teske. So let's start with Mr. David Skanga. And then after he speaks, let's go with Jeff Tipton and then Mr. John Edwards. So Mr. Skanga, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic. You will have to unmute it yourself on your end, and then I will start your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Planning Commission, for your time you spend in doing this. And I wanted to thank all the work that's being done by the planners here. It really is impressive. This is a large project. My concern is that this is a 20-year plan. It's going to impact thousands, literally thousands of people. And I don't know if there's been enough public input in this. And I say that, and it's not necessarily the fault of the planning department. This is a time of COVID. People have been quarantined. They haven't been able to get out and have actual meetings one-on-one. It's talking that's what is important. It's not how many page views you have. When you look at the events, there were 56 people at those events that were actually talked. When you talk to people, you can notice what happens because you've talked about areas where you have had some discussion. You've met people outside and been able to do things for certain areas. And I just think it's important that we have those. You have open houses where people can actually come together, not being restrained because of COVID. They don't want to get out. They don't want to go into meetings, especially elderly. People that aren't technologically savvy to do this. I live in one of the subdivisions that is in the east. I did not get a card. There was 841 cards actually that went out, it appears, and there's thousands of people that are impacted by this. So I'm just suggesting that I think you do a better job collaborating, a better job talking, you get a better plan, and I do appreciate all that is being done. I just would suggest that maybe once more collaboration and actual talking to people could be helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Skanga.
Okay,
Tipton next. Is that who's next?
Yes, Mr. Tipton, I'm going to unmute your mic. And you will have to unmute yourself to begin speaking.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Hey, I want to start out with thanking everybody for your time. In particular, Michelle reached out to us. I spoke with Rick a little bit, as well as Trent. Just appreciate you guys finally getting out here and talking to us. I echo all the previous sentiments of the earlier gentleman. And Commissioner Ehlers, I really feel like you did a great job addressing some of our concerns. And to build off of your point, I don't feel like we're quite at the finish line. I think you guys are very close. I would definitely commend you guys on what seems to be a very thorough and well thought out plan. I think that for the most part, there's large part of it that makes sense, but the impact that it has on us as residents, it seems like there's a little bit of painting with a broad brush here, you know, where restricting our access in and out of our properties is not really under what I would consider proper consideration. They did give us conditional access on one of our access points, but there's so much that's left unaddressed at this point, and we're such a low volume. I don't see how removing those access points helps. I don't really feel like the median is the right approach here. This plan would, if triggered, need me to reduce a little bit of my property. So if I'm giving up property for this, I would much prefer a turning lane to get in and out safely from my house, as opposed to a median restricting my access around. There's really so many issues that we have with this, and we have addressed. I don't know if they've really been heard, they've been listened to, but I can tell you for myself and my neighbors that we still have significant objections to this plan in its current form right now. And I would just ask that there was a little bit of consideration for the residences individually as opposed to commercial, because our access in and out isn't as great of an impact on the corridor. And we really do want to work with you guys on this. So please know that we're trying to reach out here and just hoping that you guys can kind of hear us a little bit. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tipton. We appreciate your comments. Bella, who do we have next?
So now we have Mr. John Edwards, and then after Mr. Edwards speaks, I'll unmute Ms. Karen Newell and then Mr. Ken Frederick. So Mr. Edwards, I will unmute your mic now. Please note you will need to unmute yourself. Mr. Edwards, you can begin speaking. You are unmuted, Mr. Edwards. Okay. Let's maybe come back to John Edwards and Karen Newell. If you are ready to go, I will go ahead and unmute your mic. You can begin speaking, Ms. Newell. Okay. Perhaps we'll come back to Ms. Newell as well. Mr. Frederick, Ken Frederick, if you would like to unmute yourself and begin your comment, feel free.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
I'm actually going to let my wife, Marie Frederick, speak because we're both watching this together.
So my concern is we live off of Chrismar and Patterson, and to get onto 29 Road as it is with that school right there, it takes at least maybe 5 minutes in the morning to make that turn right there to get onto 29 Road from Bonito because of all the traffic. And then there's talk about bringing in the interstate traffic onto 29 Road. That's going to make it almost impossible to get onto 29 Road. And I don't see how there's enough room to put all of those vehicles going onto Bonito, because that's a very narrow road to begin with. Because I know when I have a big truck and I try to get onto Bonito, it's a pretty tight squeeze. So just mainly wanted you guys to think of, there's going to be a lot of traffic on 29 Road between the school, possibly the interstate, to make it where we can't make that left-hand turn onto Patterson. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frederick. I wanted to give you your time if you weren't finished. We appreciate your comments. Bill, are we going to try to go back and pick up Mr. Edwards or Ms. Newell, or should we move on to someone else?
It's showing me that they are not attentive, so we'll go ahead and move to the list, and I'll circle back at the end. Okay, Miss Rachel Straughtons, you are unmuted and you can begin your comment.
Thank you. I am agreeing with several others that have already spoken and some of the commissioners as well, and I appreciate your input, especially Mr. Skanga, Mr. Tipton. We also live in the eastern part along a neighborhood that we did not get any outreach of any kind. The first that we heard of this was last week through our HOA president. So we have absolutely no outreach, and we're a fairly good size HOA. So we would really appreciate, as Mr. Tipton said earlier, more outreach, and along with Mr. Skanga, more outreach for a longer period of time when we can all come together without fear of getting each other sick from COVID. We would like to work with you more. So I will agree with those gentlemen earlier. The concerns is, as it was said before, 29 Road is not equipped to accommodate all the additional traffic that is now going to be funneled to it. There is going to increase traffic time. 29 Road in Patterson is not equipped as it is right now to handle the traffic coming from Orchard Mesa turning left, and then also the traffic from Independence Academy. And as mentioned before, the future I-70 traffic that's been mentioned. So there's going to have to be some major work on that interchange. Other things that were mentioned, timing of lights, stop lights, and maybe that might help. Another concern for neighborhoods is, for our neighborhood especially, if we're having to funnel all that traffic onto 29 Road, that increases the traffic in our neighborhoods, which does make it much more unsafe for children that are playing and those that are walking and riding their bicycles. So it may make it safer in Patterson, but not necessarily in the neighborhoods, because we got more traffic in the neighborhoods now. It's going to cut our neighborhood definitely in half with that traffic. And I do definitely want to appreciate Mr. Ehlers and some of your comments and some of your questions. It was helping to answer a lot of the concerns that we had. So I definitely appreciate all that. Again, thanks for the work and thank you for the opportunity. Again, please give us more opportunity to work with you and be heard. Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you, Ms. Stroughton. We appreciate your comments this evening.
Okay, so next, Mr. Tom Parrish, you can unmute your mic next, and then we'll hear from Virginia Brown, and then we'll try again, Mr. John Edwards. So, Mr. Tom Parrish.
Thank you. I suppose you can hear me.
We can.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening, and I also want to thank the people that have worked on this project. It's been an immense task, and I know you've put a lot of hours and time into it. I really want to emphasize the need for more time. When you look at the population of people that are going to be impacted by this, and you see the number of postcards sent out, you barely scratch the surface. We need more time. I appreciate the comments by Ms. Ehlers about that. I also appreciate the comment, I think, Prawl made, that oftentimes when you take time to listen to people, you may find other alternatives or solutions to problems. And I want you to think about giving people that opportunity to have that time with you to share their concerns. Each neighborhood's going to have unique circumstances and unique needs. And oftentimes you don't know those things until you talk to people that live in those neighborhoods and have to deal with those situations. So again, thank you for the work. And I would really hope that you would consider extending the timeline on this. You've said all along it's a long-term project. There are no federal funding deadlines or anything that would keep you from extending the deadline to gain more public input. And I would hope that you would take that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. I believe we have Ms. Brown next.
Ms. Brown, you can unmute your mic.
Thank you. I am a realtor and I work at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Western Colorado Properties, which is in the old Pyramid Printing Building. I'm not certain that all of the tenants of the businesses along that section were actually notified, because I was not told by my employing broker that this was coming up. I found out that from a totally different route. So I'm concerned that not all the business entities that needed to be notified were actually notified. I'm going to ask also, and repetitively, for additional time and more outreach to the public for this plan and for review of this plan. I did spend a significant amount of time sitting down, looking at the plan, reading it page by page. I think that 80% of it is probably very valid and thought out very well, but I think that there needs to be just a little bit more time and consideration for certain points along the way. I personally think, from driving Patterson myself, that there are some very large areas or smaller areas that are a bigger concern at this point in time. I can tell you between 24 and a half road and 25 road, the traffic is a challenge a good majority part of the day, and turning in and out of some of those businesses on the north side is a challenge. Definitely turning east out of the north side businesses is a challenge. I would also just really encourage you to reach out further than that 1,000 foot that you reached out, that 1,000 foot buffer. That's not even 1/5 of a mile. Please reach out much further. There's a lot of people that you're impacting, that their only way to access Patterson is down a residential road. That's a dead end, basically. So you're making changes to people beyond that 1,000 foot parameter. I believe that most of you should have read my comments online through GJ Speaks, and I hope that some time will be spent with those comments also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Okay, I will unmute Mr. John Edwards' mic, and then after we will try Miss Karen Newell again. Mr. John Edwards, you can now speak. Hello, Mr. Edwards, are you wishing to leave comment? I think perhaps we'll move on. And then Miss Karen Newell, you are...
Hi, this is Karen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank
you.
Oh,
Perfect. Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to make a comment. I actually found out about this project last week, and I live in the Chrismar neighborhood, and I'd like to point out that there's about 4 good-sized neighborhoods affected by closing off Chrismar. Slides 12 and 13. We have the Partee neighborhood, we have Chrismar, we have the Delmar neighborhood that has 45, 42 houses, and then all the housing to the north of all of these. I don't know what that's called, but there's a lot of houses up there. Is there the opportunity, since we're all going to have to take Bonito and sit waiting to turn right or left on 29 if we want to go east on Patterson, is there an opportunity to look at widening Bonito, creating a right turn lane at 29 on Bonito so that you don't have to sit in one single lane and wait for people to turn left when they're actually battling the parents driving their children to Independence Academy, and then the opposite, you know, in the afternoon. They're driving from, but they're also going up there to get them. We need an extra wide. Bonito's very small. You can barely get 2 cars passing, and there's no sidewalks. It's, you know, a very nice little country road, but it's not equipped to handle 4 neighborhoods of traffic trying to turn left or right. There's a lot of children that play on Bonito. There's basketball things that are sitting out on the road of Bonito that children are playing basketball on Bonito, okay? We're looking at 4 neighborhoods of folks, especially in the morning and in the evening, but in the mornings, trying to get to work, and there's going to be one long line of traffic. So I agree with Tom and the others who have said, please allow extra time to get some feedback from the people who live here, because we need access to 29 and a half. I don't know, somebody mentioned that. I think Trent mentioned it, but we need to be able to get to 29 and a half. I'm willing to sit in a right turn lane on Bonito to turn right on 29 to go to F and a half and take the extra time to go over to 29 and a half. But, you know, is that the only alternative? I mean, I don't know. Just, we need more input, I think, on this. And I wish I would have known about it sooner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Newell.
Chair Teske, that is the end, or all I'm seeing for raised hands in that function. Perhaps one more reminder that last call is available.
Yep, that seems like an excellent way to go. Bella, please do keep in mind for all of our attendees here this evening that if you'd like to provide public comment, as we've heard from several of you already, please use the raise your hand function to alert Bella that you'd like to speak. There is additional information in the webinar control panel under the handouts tab for those of you who want some additional details about how to alert us that you'd like to provide comment this evening. We'll give you another couple of minutes here for, as Bella put it, last call. All right. Well, have we had any further raised hands, Bella?
No, there is not, Chair Teske.
All right, thank you very much. Well, then at this time, we will close the public comment portion of our hearing. The applicant, of course, could provide a response or rebuttal to anything that you've heard this evening. And if you'd like to do that, please go right ahead.
So I think this is Trent. I will go ahead and take a look at the various concerns there. You know, a lot of it had to do with the outreach. Obviously, we heard a couple of instances where you know, perhaps the tenants didn't find out about it. Like I said, we did have. I think it was in between 40 and 60, you know, of our original 841 cards that were returned. Most of those, I believe, were to a tenant of a particular address, you know, that was immediately adjacent to Patterson Road there. But, you know, as Michelle, you know, depicted in the various exhibits, you know, of the access control plan there, all those yellow circles were where we did make changes. We you know, based on input that we did receive, just like the slide that she has, you know, right there on the screen, you know, where she talked about the input from Patterson Village Square. making sense that that one would be the 3/4 versus the one further to the right. All those yellow circles represented, all the outreach that we did have, specific conversations that we did have up and down the corridor. So, and then on the social media platforms, the GJ Speaks and so forth, and all the views, so forth. And we definitely, tried to make ourselves available to have those discussions. And we were not worried about COVID. I mean, we would go meet, just like I did last week, go meet with folks when requested, out there in the field, and would still offer that here between now and the city council meeting here next week. But so, in regards to the outreach, I guess you need to look at, the slide that we had shared with, that kind of summarizes the outreach that we have had, and determine whether or not that was, in your minds, whether that was adequate or not. But we definitely have made ourselves, available and had lots of, as Commissioner Gotchis mentioned, a fair amount of staff time invested in that, but we're willing to invest more. In regards to the Chrismar subdivision, a couple of different concerns there. And yes, Bonito is, as far as getting in and out of there when the school is loading or unloading, yes, many of those concerns are handled when 29 Road is widened, to 5 lanes, and there'll be, decel lanes at the appropriate streets and so forth. Please also keep in mind that that many of those streets you can still turn right out of or right into, and so not all the traffic will go down Bonito to go over to 29 Road and get out. You will have you do still get it right in, right outs on many of those streets. So if your place of employment is further to the west, you drive down the street, you take a right, and you're headed on down through the 29 Road intersection and cruising on towards work. As far as the other connection coming from Bonito over to 29.5 Road, over to a signal as another alternative to the 29 Road corridor, there is a street, I believe it's called Penny Street or Penny Lane, and that will, upon development of these next 2 very long parcels, that Bonito will transition with reverse horizontal curve down to Penny Lane and then get onto the 29.5 Road corridor then. Again, there appears to be a lot of fear that we're going to implement this in the next 6 months, and that in total disregard to the other transportation infrastructure shortcomings that we have, such as 29 Road right now north of Patterson, and that's not the case. That's not the way we do business. We're not going to cut a bunch off without making, as Commissioner Ellers asked, whether or not we'd be making other improvements on some of the side streets, such as 29.5 Road or 29 Road, to the benefit of the Chrismar and Partee and some of the other subdivisions there. Some of the other comments again about whether there was outreach, and then again the implementation. Really the whole plan is built on either shared or cross access to get to some of the 3/4 and the right in, right out access points, as well as if we bounce back, Michelle, to west of 25 Road, where we've got a number of keep cruising. Anyway, just to the north of previous slide, page 3, please. Just to the north of a lot of those businesses in between 24.5 and 25 Road, we've got Flat Top Lane, or F and an 8th Road, if we still use the that nomenclature there. That's where a lot of those businesses can then access up to F and an 8th. That gets them over to 25, right turn, and then they can make the left turn there to get eastbound on Patterson there. And so a lot of what's proposed is reliant on the rest of the transportation grid to the north and the south of the corridor in order to provide that alternative access. With that, I'll defer to Michelle if you had anything else you wanted to add in particular as far as follow-up to any of the concerns that we heard here this evening.
Trent, I think that you've hit the main points. I don't know that I have any additional information to add at this point unless there are some additional questions from the commissioners.
Good. Thank you. Dave, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't. Chairman Teske and members of the commission, we're here if you have additional questions, try to answer those.
Well, thanks to all of you. Do we have additional questions for staff? It looks like we don't have additional questions for staff. I had a couple of follow-ups, and maybe I'll just ask my questions in a less shotgun manner. No offense to Commissioner Ellers, but maybe one at a time. There was some comparison in the comments between the Patterson corridor and the North Avenue corridor when it comes to access control, and I just wondered if you might comment on the relevant differences there between those two corridors and how traffic is controlled on them.
So I'll have Michelle back me up here if I get into trouble here. And while Commissioner Eller's approach was definitely very challenging, luckily I had a spreadsheet open here and able to keep track of the 7 or 8 questions there. That was fun. So, but anyway, Commissioner Teske or Chairman Teske, in regards to the comparison to North Avenue and Patterson, North Avenue was constructed back in the mid-50s, and they went through. I'm sorry, that is. All right, thank you, Bella. In regards to the comparison, North Avenue was constructed in the mid-50s, and it started out with access control to begin with those the long medians and the various turn lanes all the way along. And as development or redevelopment happened, then some of those were extended, some of those were closed, but it started out that way. Whereas we started out.
I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but maybe it's a good reminder to mute your mic if you are not speaking.
All right. Thanks again, Bella. Whereas in the mid 80s, when we constructed the Patterson Road corridor, there was still a lot of land left to develop, and at that point, the traffic volumes out there weren't such that it wasn't as unsafe to be able to provide that center turn lane for both going to the north or to the south off of Patterson Road. They call it some people call it a suicide lane, and it definitely, as traffic volumes increase and some of those turning movements increase, that definitely can become a significant safety issue, as we've seen along Patterson Road. And so that's the difference in that we are now in the evolution of Patterson Road to where we need to be considering more significant access control along the corridor, as opposed to North Avenue started there to begin with back there in the mid-50s.
Muted.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Unmuted.
Much of that did you hear? Okay. Commissioner Teskey, you had other questions? Okay.
Great. I was muted there by Bella, probably to avoid additional musical interlude. I thought I would ask a sort of follow-up question at that point, which is really a question about what the alternatives are to adoption of a plan like this in terms of preserving the access capacity of this roadway here at Patterson. Are there other things that the city might consider doing as alternatives to a plan like this?
Trent, perhaps I'll jump in here a little bit.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So you know, this plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a roadmap. So you know, you could not adopt this plan, and you can you know, staff can continue to do the best they can in implementing access management strategies on a case-by-case basis. I think if you're looking at, you know, what happens if you don't do any access management at all, the reality is that traffic volumes will continue to increase. During these peak period times, they will get longer, and it will become more and more difficult to make different turning movements. And the traffic will dictate whether you can make those movements or not, rather than the traffic control measures that we might put out there. What that does is it puts you at some risk that you will see more crashes, which will affect your operations. Because basically then you're just leaving it up to the drivers as to whether or not they want to take that opportunity, those chances, find those small little gaps to make those turning movements or not. I know we heard a lot from folks that were saying, hey, I used the two-way left turn lane to make kind of a two-stage turn, right? I turn into the turn lane and I wait, and then I merge into traffic. And, you know, in different places with the traffic volumes as they are today, that probably works fine. I think there's definitely places currently that you're going to start to see more conflicts in that space too, right? Because if one person is doing it on the south side of Patterson and one person's doing it on the north side of Patterson, they're going to start to be jockeying for that space in the two-way left turn lane. So it's more, I would say it's more a matter of a decision about how you want to manage Patterson than having a lot of alternatives, right? Do you want to be in control of how to manage this as traffic volumes and growth continues to increase? Or do you want to kind of leave it to its own devices and let congestion develop as it may? You know, Patterson is identified as one of your principal arterials. So you've already identified it as, hey, this is an important corridor for the movement of vehicles. You're really looking to get that kind of regional connectivity and use it in that manner rather than kind of the lower classified streets. So if Patterson continues to grow, then you would also start looking towards your other parallel routes, right? People will start looking for other alternative routes, and how do you, then those other alternative routes will start to carry more traffic. And so it's a bit of a management of a system as well. So those are some of my thoughts. Trent or Dave or Rick, I don't know if you have more to add there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that thought. My last question came from Mr. Prahl's comments regarding cross access. I see the cross-access relationships, both existing and anticipated in the future throughout the plan. Is there a proposal or component of the plan to create those cross-access arrangements, or is that essentially up to the private landowners to negotiate or create on their own?
So I'll have, oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so our plan does identify where we would like to see those, and we have a table that gives all the conditions, and it identifies how different properties interact with other properties. The actual implementation of that needs to be done through the redevelopment and development review process. So that's something that Dave and Rick, as you know, properties begin to come to them for redevelopment, they'll be looking to require that as part of the redevelopment conditions, to create those legal easements between it. So you can see that piece, it has the potential to have a little bit of phasing all on its own. You know, the property A comes in, you get the easement put in place. When property B comes in, you complete that full connection. Obviously, the city, you know, will also look for opportunities to make those connections. Just, you know, if people are willing to participate in them outside of a redevelopment, there are opportunities to do that as well. But in terms of actually requiring it, it would be through that redevelopment process.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. So do we have others who have questions they'd like to have answered?
Commissioner Teskey.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Teskey, just as one other follow-up on the cross-access, one of the other ways is not only through redevelopment, but I know Rick was successful after the development of Spin City and Home Depot, PetSmart, and then the Kohl's complex. Rick was successful in working with those adjacent property owners in developing that cross-access that goes out the north of the main access there into Home Depot and PetSmart and into the Spin City complex. It's a little bit of a wiggle, but it does provide, you know, some cross-access in between all of those properties. And so that's an example of how you can also do that even after the fact there as well. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that additional thought. If we have no other questions, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the Planning Commission for additional discussion, deliberation, and a motion. Who wants to kick us off? Commissioner Gatchett.
I'll be the guy to start.
Go ahead.
If that's acceptable.
Of course.
Well, you know, this has been a very good exercise and very good public hearing, I believe, especially during COVID. I want to make sure that the public knows that we do care about their concerns and individual property rights. I think that there's the overriding decision over this is health and safety. And do we, as Michelle made a point, do we want to continue to have circumstances dictate that traffic flow on this important roadway? I think that my impression from the community was that they do think that the plan is a plan on the Patterson Road is important. There's some things that are called the devil's in the details. And after reading the comments, and I want to also specifically thank my colleague, Commissioner Ellers, and Commissioner Teskey and all the commissioners here for putting in a due process effort to understand this, to understand the concern, and to legitimately listen to the public. And I know that the public hearing process has is difficult during this COVID, but I think we had a pretty good public hearing process, even though it was virtual. Now, after saying all that, it seems to me that, and this is why we get the big bucks, and of course, I want everybody to understand that this is an advisory opinion that will eventually go to council. But my tablet is timed out. But it seems to me, in a nutshell, that our decisions are this. Do we feel it's important to have an access control plan? And if we do feel it's important to have an access control plan, how do we meet the legitimate needs of the people that came to our hearing? I thought that there was considerable amount of problems maybe with the 29 Road Benito area. A lot of people had commented that. Our next question is, well, how long the hearing input from the public says we need more time. Well, how much more time do we need to do? You know, I don't think any of us commissioners or the staff or the city wants to cram things down people's throat. But I do think that we have an obligation to 20, 30,000 automobiles and people that are driving this corridor that expect to have a safe travel and a fairly non-obtrusive travel. But I also respect the rights of the homeowners and the businesses along the corridor. And we're not going to please everybody. But, and I'm certainly, I could, if the staff thinks it would help, then I could give more time, although I don't think, I think we have to have a certain finite decision made. And of course, we also have to consider if we not make a decision tonight and forward it to City Council, how does that affect, you know, and that's, how's that going to affect their meetings and their schedules and eventually getting this through all the proper meetings. So I don't have all the answers. I think that all of us, every commissioner on this council board wants to do it the right way, and we want to have a good final project. But I guess I would say that I agree with staff that I think, Dave, you present, I was trying to pull up the criteria, but according to the criteria, I believe it meets 3 of the criteria. So I'm open to the idea that maybe give the people that are concerned about the 29 and Benito area road some more time and be heard. But I think we need to move forward. But I'd like to hear my other colleagues' opinions. Thank you.
Andrew.
Commissioner Cesaris, go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me, I guess. I share one of the concerns that Keith Ellers had, and that is with the Chamber of Commerce. They wrote a very kind letter to the city, but they did not join in and support the plan, which concerns me. You talk about 1,000 to 1,500 business members. They should certainly be buying into this plan if it's a good plan. For me personally, if I come from the mall or downtown, I go on Patterson Road and I turn north on 26 3/4 road to get to my home. Now, if I can't turn left anymore off of that Patterson Road, I'm going to have to drive all the way down to the city market, turn around in their crowded parking lot, get on 12th Street, then do a left turn off 12th Street onto Patterson Road, and then turn right into 26 3/4 road. That keeps me on the road longer than I want to be on the road, burning gas, putting fumes in the air, and just being out there in the middle of traffic I don't want to be in the middle of. And I'm sure there are a lot of other neighborhoods that are just the same way as mine. So my feeling is until the chamber buys in and I see some better ideas on this left turn thing, I'm going to vote no on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairman Teske.
Commissioner Scissors.
Thank you. I appreciate my fellow commissioners' thoughts on that and would like to sort of go from there. I think it looks like the staff or the applicant in this case has made their case that it fulfills the criteria. But on the other hand, substantial number of residents, private residents, and the business communities represented by the chamber has made a case that there's some unfinished business or that it's not quite ready, is it not at the finish line, however you want to phrase that. So actually, I can see both sides on that for sure. I actually just have more of a question about how us as a planning commission handles that situation. Do we make our decision based on fulfilling the criteria and leave the question of, has the public had adequate input and consideration of their input to the council, or do we make our decision incorporating that aspect as well? And that might be for Director Allen. I'm not sure.
Chairman Teske, Commissioner Scissors, if I could take an opportunity, I think, to ask or respond to Commissioner Scissors' question. I think the question is really, do you have the ability to maybe delay this and take in more comment, or is this something you're expected to take action on, provide a direct recommendation on this evening to City Council? I would say it's either direction are plausible options for you to take. There is no degree of expediency or timing that we have built around this per se. I think if this planning commission feels that there needs to be additional time, 2 weeks, 60 days, 30 days, whatever that time is, for additional public outreach, that's certainly something you guys can continue and table like you did actually at the last meeting, and do that again for a specific amount of time. Or if you feel comfortable with what you've heard here and feel that the plan represents the needs and certainly the consistency with the code analysis, you're certainly also able to send it to City Council for their deliberation and decision on whether it's right for decision making or if additional public comment is needed. So sorry, that long-winded way of saying you've got either option that you can avail yourself of this evening.
I could vote for giving it more time.
Yes, thank you, Director Allen. I am concerned about going forward with something that there is so much stakeholder concern about, feeling that there's more work to be done. And I do think going forward under those circumstances is fraught and would probably come back to haunt us at extremely heated hearings later on once development or redevelopment occurs and we're asked to weigh in on these matters. So I think if it's within our parameters of what we consider, it would seem the more prudent course to me would be to give this some more time.
Thank you, Commissioner Scissors. Do we have any other discussion?
Yeah, please, Andrea, go ahead.
I was just going to echo the comments. I just feel, I mean, I appreciate the staff and the consultants' work on this. I do think with the longevity of the project and also hearing the additional public comments tonight, plus reading the letter from the chamber and all the online comments, I do feel that just taking this step by step is more prudent and just giving it a little bit more time, because we really do want to have the community buy into this and not just sort of plop it right in front of them, which I know that's not what anybody wants to do. But I think as more questions are asked and more things are answered and more people are met, I think the community will feel heard, and I think things will work out in a good manner for everybody. So I also agree that that just holding off on this a little bit longer would be good.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayes. Commissioner Ellers, you wanted to speak here as well.
Yes, thank you. So I really appreciate Commissioner Scissors' comments about consistency and what applicants can expect out of this commission and how we view and review any application that comes forth. And it does, meet the criteria per the staff report and how staff has indicated that the criteria has been met. In this case, there's a couple of variables that make it a little bit more unusual than what we typically see. One may be that I think that there are some users in this plan, particularly the comments about the tenants that perhaps the chamber may be referencing when they're talking about some of their members. And furthermore, rather than speculate, it really comes down to we don't know who the chamber is referencing, and with a little bit of time, we could find out. And furthermore, what's really compelling for me as I look at how the criteria is met and then how we can best meet the needs of our community on a plan like this is that on the flip side, and I may have missed my opportunity to ask and get feedback, but I don't see anybody who is harmed either financially or otherwise by giving ourselves a very specific let's push this off, say, for 30 days and give some time for these questions to be asked. In a typical project, you may have construction prices and construction schedules and banking and lending and financing that are impacting the overall expense that comes with time. In this case, with the applicant being who they are, I'm unaware, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to indicate if there is any expense to ultimately the taxpayers here of pushing it out for 30 days in light of these recent questions. Now, with that said, I want to speak to some of the questions that have been brought up, not only by us as commissioners, but by the public here. I actually feel like nearly all of the questions have been answered here tonight. I think this has been an effective conversation, and the applicant's best efforts to present all of the information without being able to present all of the information just to its sheer overwhelmingness. The answers seemed to be there to some very challenging questions, and particularly in the areas where the residents had some issues on residential access. The chamber is one that still I think we can do better on. But, I was looking at the triggers of what makes this plan actually go into effect. And the redevelopment issue, when you go down the Patterson corridor, there are very, very few vacant parcels that would develop and could trigger those. Furthermore, there's even fewer and this is somewhat subjective, I might call, underdeveloped or projects or properties becoming obsolete that this access plan would impact, particularly when you take those areas that are the very specific chunks that was shown on the slides in this presentation. Those have kind of focused around those commercial areas that would impact those businesses. So what that lends me to believe is that there's not a whole lot of areas that maybe got overlooked. There was a specific data-based assessment and proposals. So I am in favor of this plan based on both the questions I had and the other questions I've seen from the input put in. And with that said, an opportunity for the chamber to meet with their members and present any specific issues that they have and give the city a chance to respond to that. in the absence of maybe Trent or Dave responding that no, there is harm done here, then I'd be in favor with my other commissioners of saying, hey, let's make a motion to give this a 30-day. I don't think we should push it out too far, but maybe Chairman Teske, if we can, it would help me to understand and make sure that there isn't any negative impacts on the applicant by doing so. Would that be all right by asking them?
Absolutely. Let's get an answer to that question.
Commissioner Teske, Commissioner Eller. Someone else? Anyway, Commissioner Teske, Commissioner Ellers. Yeah, you're right. I mean, with the exception of additional staff time invested, which I'm offering to do anyway, especially in between now and next week. There is no like the one gentleman said, any federal funding that's at stake that we're going to lose if we don't continue to move forward with this. And so, like many of the comments that we did here, there are it is a long-range plan. We don't have any projects that are waiting on this plan to be adopted to immediately apply the concepts developed here in that. So anyway, if you want to postpone it a certain period of time, I think we can definitely work with that if you would like. And anyway, so yeah, we were just as far as bucket list items in life in general, we were hoping that this one might be behind us, or at least headed towards council here. So, but nonetheless, if we need to slow down just a little bit and pick up a little more outreach, I'm game on doing that.
Thank you. Appreciate that feedback. Does anyone else have further discussion they want to add? Otherwise, I'll kind of say my piece and we can go from there.
Chairman Teske, I think this has been a good discussion, and certainly I want to hear what you have to say, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to do things the right way, and I think a 30-day delay would be appropriate, since our staff said there was not some bad consequences. I would say this, though. I would say that I'm hoping that the people that the staff meets with has good faith, and I'm sure they will, on trying to come up with a solution, because I do believe this is an important, I do believe for the welfare of the city, we need to have an access plan for this corridor, and I'm willing to wait and do it the right way, and I'm only one vote. And I commend all of the commissioners and the staff, because we all want to do things the right. We want to have the best city we can have. One of the comments that it doesn't upset me, because we hear it a lot, especially in the environment, the political environment we're in. But one of the comments in one of the emails I read said that this was already a done deal by the city. And I'm hoping that this discussion and this good public hearing process demonstrates that that's not necessarily the case, that we all try to do the right thing. And I talked too much tonight, and I'm willing to, and I appreciate my commissioners trying to resolve this issue for the betterment of all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gachis. I very much agree with the sentiment that's been expressed by all the commissioners here this evening, that the need for an access control plan on Patterson Road, I think, is evident to all of us. The fact that this plan, or a plan very much like it, could be adopted under the applicable criteria in the code, I think is clear to us as well. There's quite a bit of data and a tremendous amount of subject matter expertise that's been brought to bear in the creation of this plan and in the interfacing with the community. And with that being said, however, there's also a fair amount of evidence surprise and concern from the community about involvement in the process. And so I'm also both in favor of this plan as a general rule and in favor of moving this off for some short but definitive period of time to give some additional opportunity for discussion on areas where there might be specific concerns. As Commissioner Gotch just pointed out earlier, the devils that may be in the details here. Somewhat like Commissioner Ellers, I'm fairly confident that most of those devils have been located and dealt with, and that there are answers to be provided already, but having those communications may be helpful to us for a lot of reasons if we get this back, either in the condition it's in now or with some small modifications perhaps over the next couple of weeks. With that in mind, do we have a motion?
Chairman, I would motion that on the Patterson Road Access Control Plan CPA 2021-17, I move that we table this item for no more than 30 days, meaning that should the questions that are out there be addressed sooner than that and we can get it on the next hearing, that's fine. And I think that's it.
Commissioner, just to clarify your motion, I think we have a meeting scheduled. This is the 23rd of February. We have meetings scheduled for March 9 and March 23, if my calendar is working properly. So perhaps this would be a motion to table or continue this matter to the hearing on the 23rd of March? Or
later than that.
Right. No, yeah, with potential for consideration on the 9th if we're able to complete interface with the chamber and others in that time frame.
Chairman Teskey, if I may just make a friendly suggestion here, just considering the time it takes to do some additional outreach as well as prepare a staff report that would be reflective therein. If I may suggest the March 23rd date, I think is the most feasible from a staff perspective for continuation. I would appreciate that consideration.
I wondered if that might be the case, Director Allen. I also appreciate the desire to go more quickly if that is something that we can do, but I think possibly pushing this to the hearing on the 23rd of March would be a better way to handle it.
Then let me clarify the motion and restate it as Mr. Chairman on the Patterson Road Access Control Plan CPA 2021-17. I move that we table the project until the March 23rd hearing.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. All right, hearing none, that matter passes. That motion is approved 6-0, and we'll bring this back for hearing again on the 23rd of March. All right, well, my agenda indicates that we are out of things to talk about this evening. Is there any other business that we need to address before we adjourn?
Chairman Teskey, I do not have any other regular business, but just a reminder, we do have a workshop scheduled for the 4th, and then hearings are scheduled for the 9th as well. So look forward to seeing you guys here shortly.
Fantastic. Thank you for that schedule update as always. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
We've got multiple motions to adjourn. We got a motion in a second. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Well, that motion is approved and we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.